Sup Shredders! My name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SB Reacts, where today we got ourselves 3 tracks for an act named Femtanyl. The first of these titled Girl Hell 1999, and if we switch over to here, I'm gonna put that art up big on the screen. I got sent through these tracks by Corbin. They originally sent it through Apple Music. I don't have Apple Music, I have Spotify, but thankfully this music is on both. There are 3 tracks today. I've been warned that they are very loud, but that's good. I like loud music. We're gonna listen through these tracks from start till finish, and we're gonna hear what we think. Let's do it. Girl Hell 1999. Does that mean in terms of lifts or textures? Oh, there's lyrics as well. I like the kind of growl rapping there. It's visceral and it suits some of the sort of textures of the instrumental parts. Great modulation of those synths there. The lyrics are visceral, man. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, sick. That was a groove. That was a vibe. I enjoyed myself with that track. We're gonna talk about it now, because in each of these post-track sections, I'm gonna provide an overall song analysis of everything from lyrics and vocals, all the way through to studio production, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then generally, and finally, my thoughts from a general listener's perspective. This song, Girl Hell 1999, discusses the dynamic that this man and woman have about how the guy is doing anything he can to be with them, and they sound like they're really struggling to meet the expectations there. And then the woman's like, I'll become fucking destitute before I'd be your man. There are wires overhead and there are wires in your hand. You pull the plug on me, I switch you up again. Damn, it's brutal. Yeah, so that's definitely a sort of a discussion, a frenzied assault on the senses with the instrumental parts, but also with the visceral nature of the vocals. We have a more sort of calm, kind of like coldly measured performance from the woman when they come in their verse, but the kind of screaming, the fry of the nature of the vocals there, with some melody attached to it as well there. We've got good technique, I think. Ultimately, the kind of glitchy representation with the distortions a bit crushing on it as well, not only suits a lot of the surrounding textures really well, I think it also kind of mirrors the intensity of things in general there with what we're doing with the subject matter. It's incredibly heavy sounding, but it's also got this innate kind of bounce and like interesting cadence there where we kind of start on the twos of every one of the chorus parts, but we have this kind of fun, kind of almost 90s kind of phrasing to some of the vocal lines in the verses and stuff. It's an interesting kind of combination of ingredients within this piece. I mean, at 2 minutes 25, it's nice and, you know, short and sweet despite being within the 2 to 4 minutes. The music flies by in part because of how quick it is and how sort of tantalizing and engaging it is. but also because it's an assault on the senses. You have this like really cool, neat kind of bam 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 bam, this kind of sequencer bouncing between chords with a mid and eighth and 16th on beats and syncopated. You then have the hi-hats come in, and they've got a nice sort of sizzle to them, and immediately you get a feeling that this tempo is really quick. And you mix in some sort of like jungle-ish kind of drum beats and stuff as you go forward. And there's other break beats throughout the piece as well. The drums have a fantastic mixture of different sort of cymbal, kick, and snare patterns. But like a predominant amount of this track is centered around the push of the quarter notes, around the 30-second mark, for example, as there is that kind of like really intense sounding vocal line on top of it. And then you've got that sequencer pushing forward, which is sort of almost absurdly colorful in contrast to that. There's really solid sidechaining, but also the sidechaining is kind of subtle, I think, in part because of how loud the mastering is. And I dig the fact that it's not just the drums which get stuttered and chopped and stuff like that, the vocals do too. It's almost become the vocals become even more of an additional rhythmic device in part because of the way they approach things in terms of the production in post. Like, things are innately stylized. I think that part in the middle where it kind of switches chord progression and modulates between different seventh chords or extensions is cool. I think it's going between like third interval sevenths with a minor orient there, and it just sounds incredibly heavy because of that. But we kind of return with some 808s on the chord notes, and it's just it's overwhelming. But like it, because you've already had a lot of that put forward before, it's just new elements that add to further development and further create a sense of intrigue. And as we go through It's Your Problem, the last part of it, again, you really do get the feeling that we've come to the culmination, the precipice of the truth of it all. And it's just really clever, sensible music, you know, outside of it just being kind of abrasive, especially for those who aren't used to this kind of stuff. I like the kind of vocoded It's Your Problem, those kind of like robotic takes as well. I think that's a nice touch there. It suits the synthetic elements. Thematically, it's like a major sort of like key apart from that middle section there, which is inherently minor, but it's not done the way where it's trying to sort of explain that it's happy. It's almost ironically so. It's like we're ecstatic about the fact that we're alive, but also burning because of the situation we're in. Like, we're glad to know this person even though we're potentially being mistreated. It's like a consenting sort of like kind of sort of relationship, you know. But yeah, like studio recording, mixing, and mastering, there's just a lot of really cool, interesting ideas here with the filtering, the sequencing of different synth parts, the chopping and cutting of and filtering of the drum elements there, the bit crushing distortion of the vocals, the way that things have been like kind of mastered and boosted so lately by the limiter, but also everything comes through clearly, which is testament to their ability to mix and level and EQ and stuff like that. Music surrounds you in the headphones, no weird resonant frequencies. Ultimately just an exciting, bombastic track that really wants your attention, and for people who are a fan of the genre, they reward you for it. So a fantastic start to proceedings. I can understand why it's had like 28 million plays. We've got Katamari though, track number 2 for today. More of those modulations there, as per the previous track. Damn. This is like abjectly another level from the previous track. It's chopped, man. Okay, that was like almost like the first track was the introduction there. Girl Hell 1999 and Katamari by Femtanyl is the next level to it. It's incredibly it's confronting. That one, especially with the screaming at the end. As someone who can hear someone screaming for whatever reason, I'm not entirely sure what to make of it. I get the feeling someone's so done with their life that they don't even want to bother trying to sort of get away from a kind of destructive situation they're in. They're just kind of rolling the dice every time to see if things will work out better this time. So I'm running out of ways to cope, so I bite the hand that feeds me, lose my mind. And at the end there, I think maybe it's someone losing their mind and just getting to a point where they don't want to be collared anymore. That's effectively, I'm gonna just maybe think on this track for the rest of the day. The vocals from the female's perspective at the start there are brutal and heavy to listen to, especially if this is something that someone actually feels like they went through. And it won't be for everyone, but just the kind of heavy bit crushing distortion, the fry, the screams, the kind of ruthlessness of in the end, the complete antithesis of polishing. This is not meant to be a smooth listening experience. It's almost someone like having a manic episode. You feel like someone's going through hell and more. There's this kind of innate weird like calmness to like the way we deliver these lines, which when we get to those mind parts where we scream is just such a sort of like a jump scare, even though it happens multiple times. Till I drop dead from the clot in my brain, I mean, just, man, you feel for them, eh? It's like they're trying to do their best to keep it together. And this is just the expression of the vocals. We have like some robotic male vocals as well, kind of over top of them and other parts. And just like there's the other different vocal takes, but it's almost like a track you need multiple times to listen through to also sort of absorb everything that's done vocally by itself on the mic. The track itself is 2 minutes 38. You got a similar approach to some of those sequencer patterns, such as in the mid part of Girl Hell 1999, and I think that's fine. It adds a sort of a similarity in terms of the way that we approach the composition. We have those chord note kicks that I mentioned with some side chaining, and it's just berserk in terms of its like intensity for the vast majority of the piece. It's just another level up from the prior. There's just heavy, kind of like sludgy sounding crispiness to some of those kick takes and basses and how they kind of thump and blast against the limiter. And I think that actually the decision to make it so loud kind of adds to the angst and uncertainty as you get through the piece. I do dig the proficiency with a variety of different sort of like drum fills there, like around the 123 mark or something like that. There's just a really neat sort of transfer there. And there's a lot else going on with some of the sub layers. Also, the part where you just go into that clappy part around like the 1 minute 30, 1 minute 40 part is just so slick, man. It's just such a nice sort of change of pace. Like you're not gonna get Femtanyl going down in intensity. It's nothing like that, because they're kind of giving the game away that they are meant sort of like, it's almost like the music's attacking you, The emotional contagion is strong in this one. But like the most surreal kind of thing in this track, I would argue, is potentially at the end where you hear the person screaming and you hear them going through this episode, and then you have like this kind of happy clappy kind of synth thing going like crazy behind it. It's almost like it's like someone having an episode, and like everything through this has been leading up to that, and that entire noise is maybe part of why they went the way they did in the first place. There's a part where like the music kind of stutters and it's got these kind of noise gating and stuff like that, but like it and it's uncomfortable to listen to in part because the staccatoing is so in and out, almost like it's trying to do Morse code. And I don't know if I liked it, that part. Not because of a lack of musicality or an abject sense of creativity, but simply because it just was an unpleasant part, that the way it kind of writhed and wriggled and stuff like that. I liked the parts where the sequences continued and the drums like peppered along with it. That made sense to me. When you kind of stuttered and chopped and kind of scuffed it, it was like just a little bit too, I think a little bit too intense a change. But I think that's basically what they wanted to do, and this is the kind of music they're making. It's meant to be a challenging listen in parts. It's just super hyperactive, overwhelming music that's meant to sort of like, you know, mess with your senses. And you have that, you know, the corporation, the bass line the entire time. So it's not like the track is trying to do anything sort of revolutionary in regard to its approach to like being experimental with those other different musical ideas. It's more that the storytelling changes and develops and grows over top, so the lead kind of takes the lead, so to speak. It's a situation like with the previous track, you know, thematically, the song maintains a sense of mania and craziness and zaniness throughout, and you get more of a feel of kind of perversion through the oscillation between those two lines as things go to shit later on. And it's just an interesting sort of aesthetic that's created here, but nonetheless, like a really interesting listen. You know, stereo recording, mixing and mastering, I feel like in general it's well leveled and well mixed. It's just very loud. And it's like not in the way where it's mixed or mastered poorly and you've just got some part that kind of tears at you, because sometimes I get sent through music and it's like they're deliberately having a wide amount of difference between the quiets and louds to almost make it seem like a horror movie, you know? And this just, it's loud the entire time, and it's kind of like the more positive understanding of the loudness was in the late 2000s, early 2010s, where like most record labels and mastering engineers were trying to get like .-5 LUFS on their mixes, even if they weren't a genre that supported it. It's just, you know, it's challenging because the compression of the track also makes it like kind of gives you a bit of a headache if you listen too much of it. Unless you're used to it, of course, in which case I think it'd be fine. I also think it'd be interesting for people who are used to this kind of music or who have grown up with it, because listening to almost literally anything else would be a very sort of like chill time, even if it was like grindcore or something like that. It's just manic and crazy, and it's just, what a time, man. What a time. We have track number 3, Push Your Temper. Is this going to be the most intense?
You got exactly what you want.
I do like this. Oh.
I be tube inside my arm. I've always struggled with my honesty, but now I'm honest like my feet. I come on an honesty. I got your heat and the balls. You're under the honesty. When you grab in the butt, I get caught with these to
Hell of a slap to that snare though.
temper.
Okay, so that was Push Your Temper. That was an interesting track. 3 for today. I think Push Your Temper is like, I don't know, man. Is it about someone or a girl knowing that they can keep a guy if they continue to piss them off? Because that's an interesting strategy. Like, I don't know. I don't want to get too much into my own stuff here, but like, I know people who are like that, who have been in relationships with other people who are like that, and they survive primarily on how they get strung along, and then there's that moment of, oh, I'm actually really cute, you know, and then actually the rest of the time that, you know, like, it's an interesting kind of juxtaposition between put your cigarettes out of my stomach, you know, use me and flip the switch, but then also they get off on that sadism kind of thing, you know. It's an interesting track for sure. I think that the storytelling in it with the kind of vocal chopping and, you know, sequencing and sort of like oscillation and looping of parts with the push your tempo part and the continued stylization that is similar and almost appropriate at this point to the rest in order to keep a coherent sort of like tone. I think ultimately that's just, it makes sense. I think that there's some fun that is had with the vocal melodies through it. There's like an inherent catchiness with the push your tempo part. We go, oh, you know, like those parts there around 39-second mark as well, which are more of a kind of a rhythmic device, but I suppose they're vocal oriented as well if they're not synths or something. And it's almost like, because of the way that the vocals are processed, it sounds like a phone call or something like that. It sounds like very sort of like 90s kind of analog. It's like old school computer games there. It's a kind of a design or a tone there which harkens back to a moment where, like, ironically, I'm not sure if some of the people who are producing this kind of music were around to sort of enjoy that. It's like more like a nostalgic thing for some people, I think. Like, they imagine what it used to be like to play those games. It's an interesting, like, but yeah, I think the storytelling comes from someone who they've got a kind of a conflicted, difficult thing going on there, but you know, they're not cutting anymore because they've been inspired to not do that anymore by this person. And you walk away from it feeling like you've had a hell of an adventure listening to their kind of nuanced variety of different views and perspectives on it. You push your temper, seeing red, etc. Toxic relationships, you know. Outside of the vocal performance though, which I think is nice and bouncy and energetic and suits, I think, the kind of manic state of the track itself, it's a track where at 2 minutes 30 or 2 minutes 28, it's the same length as the others, and they've clearly got a tempo that they like working at, and they have a sound and like a structure that they enjoy working with. There's no filler. There are a variety of different verses and sort of like choruses and adjustments to the instrumental backing behind the scenes there that sort of attempts to elevate it. You've got this bam, bam, bam. You got this intro theme there that kind of has similar tone, as I mentioned, to previous tracks within this sort of like video that we've done. But it has this kind of interesting cadence where it kind of flips halfway before you kind of get into the second loop of it, so it is a bit less predictable. You have, again, those driving kicks there, those sidechain chord note elements there with the snares kind of slap forward there and the vocals go over top. And those 8th and 16th hi-hats on the side of it as well. Some studded kind of choppy parts for the vocals there, kind of cutting in and out there. And you just get more ferocious, I think, with some of those distorted snare and percussive layers as we go through the piece. You have more of the kind of jungly elements there, kind of stuttering and staggering around the piece around the 1 minute 30 mark, just for a kind of a switch of pace and a way of moving away from like the chord note focus. And you have the you know, like it pushes forward. And it kind of just is unrelenting in its way as it pulls through the piece. I was expecting to say more about these tracks, but also at the same time, there are things that are consistent between them with some sort of fundamental elements that, ironically, despite how complicated it sounds, that there's a relative minimalism to the layering. It's almost like we're using beat machines and we've got like 4 or 5 main elements per track, and those things kind of ruminate and push through. And we, again, part of that, using similar sounds between parts is kind of what helps the tracks to sound like connected. Thematically though, it's like major leaning again, but in a twisted sort of messy way. It's like stuttery and kind of like unbalanced and unfiltered, but at the same time the push of the quarters helps to sort of like keep it almost like it's going somewhere. And I kind of dig the complication involved there with the overall listening experience. I don't know how you could possibly kind of like do this kind of nuanced approach to the story with a chord progression either way. I just feel like the minor key choice for this would have been too on the nose. And like we've mainly had major keys, I think, for most of these tracks, which I think is meant to sound ironically euphoric and uplifting despite the severity of the subject matter. Ultimately, though, I think, again, the modulation of some of those parts there is kind of fun. There's some cool chord ideas there that have been put in. And I think, again, the percussion is off, and the vocal melodies and harmonies and leads and stuff are a lot of what makes these tracks special. Studio recording, mixing, and mastering. Again, a lot of the sort of creative post-production decisions that have been made throughout the previous couple of tracks, I think it's just ultimately the way that the vocals and everything else are presented with this kind of shimmery, kind of vintage, kind of like fragile overtone there, despite how harsh they've been made to be through the drive that's been added to them. The use of filters and sort of like reverbs and sort of like squashed kicks and bus compression and the kind of the loading and limiter being like kind of cranked is part of the charm of this. But ultimately, it's commercial grade within its style and genre. So ultimately, no applicable constructive critique for this track. I'm going to talk about these songs as a whole in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of these 3 tracks from an act named Femtanyl, titled Girl Hell 1999, as well as KATAMARI and Push Your Temper. In this section, I'm going to provide an overall analysis of these tracks, of everything from lyrics and vocals all the way through to studio production, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then finally my general thoughts. From a listener's perspective, I should note that I've already provided individual song analyses per song via the various sort of like at the end of each track. So if you want to go check out more sort of like specific comments, maybe do that. But before we go any further, what do we think these tracks are about? I think effectively these tracks are about like toxic relationships, people being in tricky situations there with those they're with, masochism and sadism, a whole bunch of codependency, and just some really intense, heavy stuff, especially for people who have gone through it. I think that this will be relatable to people, whether that is fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective of it. That is the beauty of music, is that it is, usually subjective, but it's done in a way where vocally there's screaming and like vocal thrash, kind of like growls and stuff in Girl Hell 1999. And it's kind of incredible, all the different styles we put forward of vocals there. We've got some sung and some sort of like melodic rap parts. And we've just got parts such as in KATAMARI, where there's someone having a real episode and just having a real go at someone. And you feel like there's something incredibly violent going on at that stage. Like they've just completely lost at that point. They've rolled the dice and come up blank. It's kind of almost weird how nonchalant we are, such as in Push Your Temper, where like the stuff we're discussing is so on the nose, but we're not taking it like in a way where it'd be dramatic or too intense, you know. It's this kind of weird, quirky, unsettling playfulness that is done throughout this piece that kind of elevates it. And ultimately, it's just 3 quite well-told stories, even if they're not necessarily comfortable to listen to. These tracks are structured in a way where they open with these synth motifs and kind of repeaters and sequences, and you have other sort of like bass elements like 808s there, and the drums a mixture of chord note accents with like kicks and some snares, and they're heavily bit crushed and distorted. They are brutally loud tracks, not just from a post-production perspective, but also in terms of how things are put forward with the individual elements themselves in terms of their textures and timbres. The basses are usually well behaved in terms of playing along with the root notes there. The sequences usually either kind of dance between notes that are relevant to the key signature or modulate, such as in the midsection of Go Hell 1999. And you go between these tracks, and it's a very sort of like interesting rhythmic exercise. I think rhythm's one of the most important parts outside of the coloration and extension, those progressions and how they oscillate. There's a lot of sort of tom-fill transitions, but predominantly outside of the chord note kicks, there's this kind of jungle and breakbeatish kind of beats there that's remind me a lot of kind of like 90s kind of like music of a similar design there. It's interesting how the stylization with again the distortion and like beat crushing stuff like that makes it seem like it's from old school video games. And I kind of dig the way that aesthetic is put forward here over top of the subject matter. It's something that I haven't really heard before, which I think is potentially part of why they have an audience like they do. It's music that it's like a different sound that people appreciate and enjoy. But it's just ruthlessly like intense and like it's unrelenting and unforgiving for those. Like, it's not going to be a gentle listening experience by any means. This is challenging music primarily because it's like tightly compressed. There's not any compositional dynamic range really. I mean, like, there is, to be fair, when there is nothing, it chops and it stutters and it stirs and it tumbles over itself. It's not like it's like poorly produced or anything like that. It's just more, it's trying to overwhelm your senses, and I think in some situations it succeeds in doing so. There's other bits of filtering and layering and other bits of ear candy that I probably haven't mentioned though, but I think that more than anything, that almost sort of suggests that there are repeated listens available for these tracks in a way that is additive to your experience. I mean, thematically, outside of the synth choices, the sequences that are going between with minor sevenths or major sevenths going backwards and forwards there for a kind of a surrealist kind of exposure there, intermingling with a lot of kind of vocal led parts that the drums kind of dance around and provide a ground bed for, along with the bass when it decides to really sort of drive things home. You have tracks which are predominantly in a major focus, but it's so kind of bizarre in the sense that the subject matter is clearly not happy. It's clearly not having a fantastic time. So you do really get the feeling that they're just going through some trials and tribulations, and this is sort of like exacerbated and sort of like sort of surrealist kind of presentation. It's very quirky music, and I think it's a different experience again for those who can relate to the subject matter and those who can't. Ultimately though, I think the use of minors occasionally makes sense. It's just more about the sound design and the instruments and the storytelling rather than trying to sort of communicate it bluntly with a chord progression there. It's more trying to be a style of music with the chords and how the sequences are presented and how they move around the piece. But like studio production, recording, mixing, and mastering is the icing on the cake. This music just objectively would not work as well unless it was as loud as it was. The use of side chaining, leveling, bus compression. I mean, it's like at least like -6, -5 LUFS. It's very loud. But there's no weird resonant frequencies around the frequency spectrum either. Like, things do have a home and a niche. It's all very kind of amalgamated very tightly. Music surrounds you in the headphones, which is kind of cool. And yeah, ultimately, I feel like I've said too little but enough at the same time. There's probably stuff that I missed. I think you need time to absorb this music and to listen to it without trying to analyze it in order to fully appreciate it. But there's no applicable constructive critique at all. Again, I can understand why these people are successful. From a final generalist perspective, again, I just want to thank Corbin for sending this music through. It's nice to listen to music that I haven't really heard much of before. I think sometimes when people send through music, they assume it's going to be a shocking thing for me. And sometimes it is. I mean, at the end of that second track, I just wasn't sure, with Katamari, I just wasn't sure how to take it. But it's more shocking because it's just, you have an empathetic experience with it. Like, you wonder if someone's getting like hurt. You kind of hear the struggle they're having with it, and you aren't sure about the severity, how real it is, and whether like these are stories that they're making up or like this is real stuff they've gone to. You just feel an innate sense of sort of sympathy for them, I suppose. Nonetheless though, I wish everyone involved all the best of luck in the future with the music, because thank you for watching my review of these 3 tracks from Femtanyl, titled Girl Hell 1999, as well as Katamari and Push Your Temper. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias and their Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as you need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I will catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.